Well, welcome to Christ and Culture. We're going to be continuing talking about the recent oral arguments before the Supreme Court that has the potential of ending the infamous Roe v. Wade decision that has been around for about 50 years. We're happy about that. But the left, the liberals, the Democrats, the pro-abortion people, the ones that have no problem with killing babies in the womb, they are in a panic. And that's a good thing because they sense that this terrible, awful Roe v. Wade decision of 1973 might be coming to an end. And so that should make us glad to think that this might possibly be the end of Roe v. Wade. That would not be the end of abortion, unfortunately, because even if the Supreme Court justices were to overturn Roe v. Wade, it would just send abortion laws back to the states, and then each state would have to decide what it would want to do. And from the estimates right now, half of the states in the United States would ban abortion, which would be a blessing. That would be great. If we can't get all 50 states to ban abortion, then it's better to get half of the states to ban abortion. And then over time, possibly even more would ban abortion. But the way it is right now, abortion is legal in all 50 states. That's an awful, terrible thing. We have to change that. And that's why the pro-life movement has been active for nearly 50 years now. I have been praying for nearly 3 decades. I've been a part of pro-life organizations. I work with the Christian Action Council in Falls Church, Virginia. I have been a part of the pro-life movement off and on for the better part of 3 decades. I've been to the March for Life a number of times in Washington, D.C. I voted every single presidential election for the pro-life president to elect pro-life judges. And this plan about voting for the president who will elect pro-life judges has been very discouraging because we've seen judges come and go. I remember the time when Ronald Reagan was a high-profile pro-life Republican president, and we were all excited about him. He wound up appointing, I believe, a couple of justices who turn out to be not pro-life. The biggest one being Sandra Day O'Connor. She actually voted to affirm Roe v. Wade. So there have been some really bad choices by Republican presidents as far as justices, but it looks like the last one, Donald Trump, appointing 3 conservative pro-life justices to the bench. This may be the end of Roe v. Wade, and it's coming at a time when we really need this terrible abortion ruling to go bye-bye, because it's been terrible ever since it was passed. It has created what we now call the culture wars, and that's what bad policy can do. It can divide a nation, can tear a nation apart. So we need to get rid of it. Let us pray that this is finally the end of Roe v. Wade. But let's read a Yahoo News article that is going to outline some of the different perspectives. Let's interact with some of these perspectives. Some of these are just propaganda pieces. Others are real concerns. Others are fears on the left. We're going to interact with all of these different perspectives and see what we can make sense of this. One of the perspectives is what would happen after Roe v. Wade is overturned. Abortion would suddenly become a central issue in every election in the country. Like it's not already, but let's just hear what this perspective says. If you get rid of Roe, every single state will need a position on fetus viability, weeks when you can and cannot have an abortion, parental notifications, sonograms, and possible exceptions like rape, incest, threats to the mother's life. And every single primary and general election could be dominated by those specific positions. Again, I would say, what's new? Every single presidential national election is dominated by abortion right now. So this objection is saying, well, if you do away with Roe, then all of these states will battle abortion state by state. Right. Better that way than on the national level, because it's tearing our nation apart. So if you're going to deal with these issues, it seems to be better that you should deal with them at the local level and not at the national level. Because if you deal with it at the national level, the liberal eastern seaboard states can tell the southern states what to do and try to impose their will on the South or the Midwest. But if you send it back to the states, there is no imposing of the will from some other region on a state. It's their own state has to decide what they're going to do about abortion. And if the people don't want it, they shouldn't have to have it. And the law right now, the case that's before the Supreme Court, is Mississippi wants to ban abortion after 15 weeks. And they say, we want that right. Washington, D.C. should not be telling us how to regulate abortion. And the leftists, they want top-down, heavy government control on this issue, and they want to impose their immorality on people. Well, on this issue, it is better left to the states. And so the big fear here is that abortion would suddenly become a central issue in every election in this country. That would just take it away from the national spotlight where it is right now and put it on the local elections, which would be better. It actually would be an improvement. The fight over abortion rights could tear the country apart. And again, I would say it's already tearing the nation apart. So what's new? If Roe is reversed, if the court rules, as its most conservative justices have argued, that no protected right to reproductive choice exists, then the political Cold War over abortion will flare immediately into a roaring blaze. Again, this is more hype. This is more panic porn that's being pushed by the left. Abortion right now is at the center of the cultural war. It is dividing our nation. So you're going to have to pick where you want it to be controversial. Do you want it to be controversial at a national level? Do you want it dominating Washington, D.C. and presidential elections? Or do you want the battles to be fought in the separate states at local levels? And it hasn't worked on a national level, so let's give it a local level try. It worked before Supreme Court in 1973 inserted themselves into the states. See, before Roe v. Wade in 1973, every state had its own laws. And the more liberal states like New York, they had liberalized abortion laws, unfortunately. I mean, as a Christian, I don't like that. But they didn't tell, the liberal states like New York didn't tell the conservative states, like in the South, how to deal with abortion. Now, under Roe v. Wade, the liberal states like New York are telling every state that they must deal with abortion like the liberal states. And so that is clearly not constitutional. There is nothing in the Constitution that guarantees a woman a right to kill her baby in the womb. And so this is a wrong decision. It needs to be corrected. We need to go back over Roe v. Wade and take it away. It was clearly a failure. It was a wrong choice. It was bad law. No constitutional lawyer would argue that Roe v. Wade was a good decision. It has failed on every count. So we need to go ahead and correct our mistakes and stop holding on to a failed policy, no matter what the consequences. Now it says returning the power to voters will lead to a calming of tensions around abortion. I believe it will. The politics of abortion isn't the court's concern. Such a profound moral question in a democracy should not be determined by unelected judges. Roe and its progeny didn't end abortion debate. It merely embittered it, damaging the court in the bargain. It's time for the justices to bow out and let the people decide. Okay. And I believe that that's true. Now, ultimately, I believe that is actually unconstitutional to allow for abortion, because we actually do have laws that protect life. And you cannot kill someone, a person, a baby in the womb even. You cannot kill that person unjustifiably. And just because the mother doesn't want to raise the child, just because the mother wants to go to college, just because the mother wants a career, just because a mother already has children, just because all of these number of reasons does not give her the right to kill her baby. She can't kill anyone's baby, hers or anyone else's. She can't kill a person because she doesn't want to deal with that person. And that's depriving that baby of life. And that is a fundamental right, constitutionally guaranteed. So it actually is against the Constitution to allow for abortion to exist at all. But in our crazy, sinful, evil times, if we can get a law that at least allows each state to decide that decision, a lot of them will use their wisdom and decide to ban the practice outright. It shouldn't ever be allowed in any state, but at least if we can get it banned in most states, that's progress. Another concern is a state-by-state stasis could quickly be reached. In the bluest states, where voters are most supportive of abortion rights, nothing would change in post-Roe world. That's true. For example, in these very ultra-liberal states like New York State and California, nothing would change. Let me repeat that. Roe v. Wade, overturned by the conservative justices in June, when this decision comes, nothing in the liberal states would change. Abortion would go on just like before. Now, from a Christian perspective, I don't like that, but I also think of the good, because in many states, abortion would be banned outright. And then in other states, it would be really highly regulated. So you could reach a state. This concern is talking about a state-by-state stasis or normalization. You might get a stable situation where the blue states would be for abortion and the red states would be against it. It said red states would move to restrict abortion, but there's a good chance that these measures would be popular locally. It could be then that the decentralized nature of the American system comes up with an arrangement on abortion that is broadly acceptable to most people. Okay? So, actually, it could be that the culture wars tamp down. They stop being so bitter, stop being so much anger, stop being so much fierce opposition, and it really could quiet the culture wars. And I think that will happen. The end of Roe is the first step of a much larger campaign for abortion opponents. Okay, this is the left, and this is the fear of the left. It's worth remembering that this long generational march of the pro-life movement is not only a march to the starting line for the real race. So this is true in almost anything. You have on the left a long march for banning weapons in this country, for chipping away at the amendment of our Constitution that guarantees the right to bear arms. You could say that with the so-called LGBTQ movement, the gay rights movement. There is a long march on all kinds of important issues. And so why just talk about the pro-life movement has this long march and strategy to try to win people to its side? Why pick on the pro-life movement for doing that? There's a long march for all kinds of issues. I think the biggest long march strategy was the gay rights movement. They started in the 60s, and they have been slowly but surely pressuring, cajoling, forcing, using blackmail and all kinds of political techniques to try to get their way. And lo and behold, they got their way in 2015 with Obergefell, and they're still marching. So it's not over yet, and it will never be over for them. They're always pushing for some perverted, twisted, immoral sexual right. And there are plenty of perverted, twisted sexual practices that are still available for them, including pedophilia and bestiality and all kinds of perverted, twisted things, which will eventually show up in the LGBTQ list. But so there's a long march for all kinds of issues, and it's not just the pro-life cause. There are all kinds of issues in politics, and there will always be those. So what's new? Why pick on the pro-life people for what they want to do and try to win the country to them? The next concern is the partisan split over the legitimacy of the Supreme Court will become more pronounced. Again, this is a gaslighting attempt by the left to say the conservatives are politicizing the court, which is the biggest joke that they've ever told. The left has already politicized the court for the last 50 years, at least. Every agenda item that the left and the liberal Democrats want in a legislative agenda that they couldn't get through votes in Congress and Senate and a popular vote, they have pushed to the court, and the court has done their dirty work. The same way with the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. That was a political act on the left. They pushed the political leftist judges to impose abortion on the country when they knew that they could not get it passed through Congress, Senate, House of Representatives, couldn't get it signed by the president. They knew that they could not go the normal legislative route, so they pushed it on the court. So now they're coming back and saying, well, this will politicize the court. The court has been politicized by the left for the last 50 years. And when conservatives are appointed to the bench and want to bring the court back to neutrality, back to the Constitution, back to reading the text of the Constitution and not making up law on the fly like the leftist ideologues on the bench do, then the left says, hey, you're politicizing the court. That is the very definition and example of gaslighting. You're accusing someone of doing something that you yourself are guilty of doing. You're the one that created the problem, and then you're blaming someone else for the problem you created. That's what the left is doing here. They're saying that overruling Roe would likely cut against popular opinion. Well over half the Americans do not want abortion rights eliminated. Again, depending on how you ask the question, you're going to get different results and polling numbers. Putting the court at risk of a backlash that could damage its public standing and jumpstart conversations about the court reform. Okay, so they're saying that this is Sotomayor, Justice Sotomayor's big argument, which is totally lacking in any profound argument. She's saying, well, if we reverse Roe v. Wade, people won't respect the courts. Well, people don't respect the courts because of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade has been the biggest problem the court has had to deal with in the last 50 years. Everyone looks at Roe v. Wade decision and go, that is not a court decision that is based in anything other than just the liberal justices' politics. Nobody can look at the Roe v. Wade decision and say, that's really tight, close constitutional logic there. No. Nobody defends Roe v. Wade on the basis of the Constitution. Nobody. The only way you can defend Roe v. Wade is on the basis of your political views. If you like abortion, you like Roe v. Wade. And that has undermined the court's credibility. Making decisions based on your liberal politics is a credibility problem for the court. Not trashing that terrible decision and saying, look, people, we have to admit we got it wrong. Now, some of the arguments actually go as far as saying, well, whether it's right or wrong, we have to keep Roe v. Wade or it will undermine the authority of the court. People won't know and have authority, respect the decisions of the court. They're willing to go that far. They're willing to say, even if this is a terrible, awful decision, we can't change it now because people won't respect the court. No, people will respect the court for correcting their mistakes. If this is a bad decision, it needs to be thrown out. If it's a bad decision, the court needs to own up and say, look, justices are human. They make mistakes. They reason poorly. And so this decision was a bad decision from the get-go. And now we're correcting that bad decision. We're throwing it out. We're striking it down. And let it be a lesson for other would-be activist judges. Do not legislate abortion from the bench. Stick to the Constitution. The Constitution says nothing about abortion, does not give the woman the right to kill her baby. The old ancient pagan Romans, they gave parents a right to kill their children after they were born through exposure. It's called exposure. If the baby didn't look strong enough or they didn't like the looks of the child, they could go out and leave the child in the middle of a field and just walk away. And that was acceptable in the Roman culture. And is that what we want? Is that the kind of morality we want in the United States, where a woman can just decide on her own? Well, I don't want that child. Are we going back to old paganism in some kind of a form of murder? Now, when the parents walked away from the child in the field, they knew that they were killing that baby. Baby cannot exist in the middle of a field. It's not, quote, viable out there. And any wild animal can come by and eat it. It can die of exposure. It can die of cold. It can die of starvation. It can rot, and it will die if left out in the middle of the field. In fact, the early Christians were known to go out and save these babies who were left for exposure, much like the pregnancy centers do, and Christian families that adopt these babies who are scheduled for abortion, but the woman decides she can give it up for adoption. We don't want to go back to the old pagan ways where the parents can expose their child, just put them out in the field and leave him. We don't want abortion in our country. We don't want the killing of unborn children. The Supreme Court may soon reconsider other established rights. Okay, so here is some more panic porn on the left. They want to say, well, where will this end? I mean, here's what they say. But far more than the right to abortion, Mississippi's victory would be upend bodily autonomy, privacy, and substantive due process rights. With one fell swoop, the right to contraception, the right to be gay, the marriage equality, trans rights, and the right to an interracial marriage could once again be threatened. Okay, so this is the slippery slope fallacy that if the court strikes down abortion, oh my goodness, there's going to be all kinds of laws that could go by the wayside. Well, if they're bad laws, they should. Right? I mean, isn't the Constitution set up for good laws as a way of passing good laws and rejecting bad laws? And if we stick with the Constitution, shouldn't we have good laws? And if we go against the Constitution or invent new rights, that's going to hurt our country, right? So, yeah, if it's a bad law, if it's bad precedent, should be struck down. There's nothing bad about that. That's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. The reproductive rights movement will be emboldened to find new ways to defend access to abortion. That's okay. No problem with that. I mean, if it's killing babies in the womb, we shouldn't be doing that. The Roe decision in 1973 marked a stunning defeat for people who opposed abortion, and it sparked a massive uprising. The anti-abortion movement will likely face its own cataclysm by June of next year. What was clear Wednesday is that a group of committed abortion rights supporters is ready to fight to liberate abortion beyond Roe. We'll see what happens there. I mean, if they're afraid that abortion rights, people, pro-life people, will try to impose all kinds of other things on people. No, that's not the case. Basic morality and basic human rights, like the right to life, yeah. But I don't see any pro-life people going around trying to push to end the right to contraception and all kinds of other things. That's just a straw man. That's just a red herring. That's a slippery slope argument that can easily be refuted. Voter suppression could prevent a post-Roe backlash against the GOP. If the Republican-appointed justice, only one of whom was appointed by a president who originally won the popular vote, sounds somewhat cavalier about stripping half the country's population of a fundamental constitutional right, well, they have good reason to be confident. They have engineered a system that allows the people, whose will they invoke with venomous cynicism, little power to respond. I actually heard one commentator say, the conservatives better not overturn Roe v. Wade because it'll hurt in the midterm elections, because Democrats will be energized. This misses the whole point. I don't care about the midterm elections as much as I care about stopping babies from being killed. And I don't think Christians even care about that. Do you think we're not going to overturn Roe v. Wade so that we win in the midterm elections? What a bad bargain. So we have a deal with the devil. We want to win the midterm elections, so we give up the pro-life cause? No, that's insane. It doesn't really matter what happens. Really, you have to do what's right. If stopping the murder of unborn children is the right thing to do, you have to do that. Whether it wins you votes and whether you win in the future or whatever happens, you have to do what's right and stop trying to play chess, 50 years down the road. So that's been the commentary that I think we'll have to wait and see what happens in June. We need to continue to pray and ask God to bring about a victory and be on our knees and just really pray that God will see the end of Roe v. Wade. Take care. God bless. We'll see you back next week.